Welcome. Today's post is, Trust Kansas at the 2023 Super Bowl, the Commander-in-Chiefs. Published on February 22, 2023. People are always asking for more updates on current events, and that's exactly what we'll be covering in this post. Here are the topics we'll be decoding today. You can always find this list in the description below. If you enjoy this video, please press the like button, and subscribe for weekly full-length blog posts, and shorter, more shareable videos. Let's begin. The more popular something is, the more likely it's important as a comm. This is because fame is a byproduct of media promotion, and as money buys media promotion, it means the more popular something is, the more investment it has. Simply put, the most popular pieces of media in a given year are among the most important events. This is regardless of how irrelevant the event seems on the surface level. There is a reason these things are pushed by media conglomerates. Why do they choose what they choose? These comms are often markers for major societal shifts. The most popular things over time leave behind a trail that can unravel the true history of the world. So what are the most popular things every year? Super Bowl. The answer by some metrics is the Super Bowl. We just had a Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Without comms awareness, it would be easy to assume any team could have taken those spots, but if you've read my posts, you know these spectacles are coordinated. Every year major events are coordinated, and some use this as the public channel. So, what did it mean for Kansas to win? To answer that question, we need to find more comms that will help define things. What else was popular last year? Another way to rank popularity is with box office, and if we go by box office, the answer to the most popular thing of the year. The answer was Top Gun: Maverick. What's my point? It's an interesting thing. There is a relationship between these two comms. The Super Bowl was just won by the Kansas City Chiefs, and Top Gun 2 hired the backup Super Bowl quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs to coordinate the football scene. The biggest movie of the year, coincidentally, hired the team that would be the winner of the biggest TV media event. They could have picked anyone, including the much more famous Tom Brady, who I will remind you is the quarterback who beat the Kansas City Chiefs in that 2021 Super Bowl. They picked Kansas, who would then win, and meanwhile Tom Brady wouldn't make it to the Super Bowl. What does it mean for Kansas to lose the 2021 Super Bowl to Tom Brady but then beat the Eagles in 2023? Many of my readers began with Q, perhaps you recall these posts. Trust Kansas. Notice that Q specifically ties Pompeo unleashed to the Super Bowl and ongoing court cases. From that perspective, the winning of Kansas might just represent some very positive things for Trump as well as the whole country. This helps clarify the loss as well. Who lost in 2020? Kansas City Commander-in-Chief. These football ops were coordinating the election ops. Biden won, but it's not as clear as it may seem if you only follow mainstream media. The Biden win was and remains a movie. I've decoded it from many angles, but these look to be the most promising yet for helping clarify with precision what's been going on. So where do I begin? Why was Top Gun used as a symbol? I can answer that question extensively in this post, but as a teaser let me inform you of one curious connection. Do you know who co-stars in Top Gun Maverick? That'd be a man named Miles Teller. The film is, in part, about Tom Cruise trying to save the life of Miles Teller. Do you know what film Miles Teller did directly before Top Gun Maverick? October 27, 2017. Thank You for Your Service, starring Miles Teller. October 28, 2017. Q begins posting the first markers of criminal justice leading to the Great Awakening. This is a big find, and understanding the meaning of this is going to require a lot of context. We need to understand the point of Top Gun as well as just about everything else going on with the Super Bowl. Top Gun is going to require a lot of time, so let's first focus on the Super Bowl symbolism. Let's start with the most prominent piece of media every year in a Super Bowl. 2023 Super Bowl halftime. We already have a clue about the court cases working in the background, let's consider the most prominent symbol of the night. The surprise reveal. Pregnancy comms are tied to upcoming events. So this could be read as something about to be birthed. But what? Given the context of court cases, it could very well represent those. Why Rihanna? To understand this, I have to decode her origins. I'll also be decoding Top Gun and the Super Bowl and a lot of other things, but we have to start somewhere. Her debut single just so happened to be released the same day as YouTube's earliest viral video. May 24, 2005. Most popular YouTube video, first backflip on YouTube, house dismount, 10 days held. May 24, 2005. Pond a replay, play it again, debut single on debut album of Rihanna. Her first song is about play it again, comms of pushing people into watching videos over and over again. This is coordinated pushing for YouTube. Now there is a caveat here in that this was among the very first videos, so you could argue it was simply being the earliest, but I can prove this isn't the case. Before I do that, I want to demonstrate why I'm confident with the symbols. Look at the video. Comms of replay, just like YouTube. It's a comm of asking for more algo pushing. Why this video? It was the 9th video uploaded to YouTube. It is stated to have many staples of YouTube meme videos that would follow. That house dismount was the 9th video ever uploaded to YouTube, so in theory, if you were to do a search backward, you should see every YouTube video from the 1st to the 9th, but that's not what you see. Instead, you see the first video followed by the 9th video. And then videos a whole year later. Why? It's because these videos had markers to be spread. Algo support, which is precisely what the video was about. The other videos uploaded had no algo support, so it was turned on with the 9th video. A carefully picked video to highlight what they believed would be appealing to a mass audience, and thus it becomes the very first trending video. This doesn't explain anything in the context of the current comms, but it does demonstrate she was used to send comms for important media ventures around. What then does Rihanna symbolize in more modern times? It's important to understand the history, and just how big someone is. Top of the world. So whatever she is sending comms for might have a lot of strings. I believe she is and has been long used to symbolize Ghislaine Maxwell. In order to explain why, I have to first explain what Terramar is. Terramar is Maxwell's charity, a nation built in the lawless seas that gets prominent people to become citizens. Given Maxwell's history tied to child trafficking and blackmail, what might this mean for citizens? Note Terramar's logo was made by the same guy that did Obama's famous campaign art. What does this have to do with Rihanna? Rihanna hasn't released an album since 2016, and the one she did before that was in 2012. This is to say she doesn't release albums all that often, but her album in 2012 coincided with something I feel may give a clue. Her 2012 album was released on the same day Terramar had its one and only fave. November 19, 2012. Rihanna Diamonds album. November 19, 2012. Ghislaine Maxwell's Terramar only fave. Given the importance of this venture, for them to highlight just one specific date as favorite means something must have happened that day worth a special note. This is a weak connection by itself, but context is everything. Terramar is focused on the sea. The lead single of this album is all about the beautiful sea. Note the single was created with Stargate as a producer and called Diamonds. Diamond symbolism is something I've gone over as tied to stars and blackmail. Rihanna lingerie connection, same kind of connection as Epstein. I wouldn't have connected these dots if not for the fact that when I dug into Rihanna, her haircut reminded me of Maxwell in some of her more famous images. Take a look. Note Rihanna's 2012 haircut is specifically called a pixie haircut. Maxwell's haircut is called her signature pixie cut, which she has had over the years. I'm not an expert on haircuts, but I do know they are used in comms, and while none of this is incredibly strong evidence by itself, there's a lot more. Notice anything curious about how Rihanna is shot in that 2012 image? Topless young girl. Do you know what Maxwell is famous for? Maxwell's famous habit of surrounding herself with topless girls and keeping catalogs of them. Additionally, one of the most prominent things I came across while researching Rihanna is her place of birth. Just about every other article makes special mention of her being from the Caribbean. Like the Virgin Islands. March 25, 2008. Obama caught on secret Caribbean Virgin Islands 6-day tour. March 26, 2008. Caribbean-born Rihanna Girls' Night Tour begins. This visit to the Virgin Islands was as Obama was courting a win over HRC, and possibly a symbol is given allowing others to control him. This is highly speculative, but when we consider everything else we know it's a logical hypothesis. So if Rihanna symbolizes Maxwell, what then? She was chosen as the Super Bowl halftime show. The Super Bowl symbol involved Kansas and the court cases. This fits perfectly. It is the Maxwell cases being birthed, and that is what Kansas/Pompeo Sessions/Durham set into motion. I've gone over the importance of Maxwell in several posts. Q had a massive build-up to it, giving us a countdown that ended with her arrest, telling us in no uncertain terms that between June 28 and July 4 we'd get the arrest that would bring everything down. True to the word, Maxwell was arrested that precise week. The Maxwell case has been going on in the background for a very long time, and it seems the fruits of it are about to become clear. If I examine her performance in the halftime show, might that help clarify? Notice the songs she chose to use. Choosing to cover a piece by Kanye West gave her negative press. All of the lights. Why invoke this calm? Kanye blew up his own career. I go over the symbolism of that in my Yeezy post. However, for the purposes of this calm, there's another aspect of Kanye that seems pertinent. Of all the people she could cover a song of, she picked the one famous for being pro-Trump. There's a big difference between what Kanye symbolizes today versus what he symbolized in 2015. But what about the original purpose of invoking this specific song about wanting people to see everything? Notice the words, "Courts suck me dry," and the timetable. November 18, 2010. Sweden arrest warrant sought for Julian Assange rape investigation. +4, future event/death number. November 22, 2010. Kanye My Dark and Twisted Fantasy fourth single equals, All of the Lights. Notice it's the fourth single, it's little details like that which give away the connection. Notice his album includes artwork sex censored fantasy of a man having sex in a highly exaggerated caricature. A smear. The lyrics give it away the most. Assange is someone tied to shining the light on the darkness, and this is a symbol of being, all of the lights, a song about doing exactly that. The only problem is, the lyrics of the song involve courts sucking him dry and him being replaced. That he can't see children, the same situation Assange was in. It reminds me of Lady Gaga comms, which have the same kind of symbol. The gag order comm. Gaga uses her tattoos to convey the consequence of breaking a gag order. A beaten-up rat has to ask itself if it wants to continue writing even if it means a certain death. This Kanye comm is in the same vein, presenting the idea of desperately wanting to show people all the lights, but then having his world shattered over and over again. Was this a message sent about shutting Assange up? This might be an example of why Kanye was given great press for so long. He was used by that machine before turning on them. In context with these comms invoked, Rihanna today might be the symbol of everything going public. We also need to consider the other Super Bowl shows. For example, there's a curious fact that Eminem was a recent halftime show. This is curious because Rihanna's most successful song, Only 14x Platinum, is the one she collaborated on with Eminem. That could be a coincidence, but given that popularity typically is a sign of comms, I'll decode that one. Notice it had its debut on YouTube the same day as Toy Story 3. This is particularly curious given the most famous moment of each piece of media. June 18, 2010. Toy Story 3 Pixar famously traumatic scene where toys accept burning to death in a fire. June 18, 2010. Love the Way You Lie lyrics, Stand There and Watch Me Burn, that's alright because I like the way it hurts, and if she leaves again. It ends with Eminem promising, I'ma tie her to the bed and set this house on fire. Both have a very precise message of accepting burning to death in a fire. Now as for what this means. Given the context of the Super Bowl I tied into Assange and the potential release of information, might this represent the consequences of exposing people? Notice the production of the video. July 21, 2010. Love the Way You Lie begins shoot, burning to death in fire imagery plus future context. July 23, 2010. Horrifying AI thought experiment got Elon Musk a date, Roko's Basilisk, future where angry AI takes revenge on any that didn't help it come into existence. July 24, 2010. Love the Way You Lie finishes shoot, burning to death in fire imagery plus future context. The song specifically highlights that Eminem will burn someone to death in the future if they ever turn against them. This concept is applied in the Roko Basilisk. A horrifying AI thought experiment about an AI taking revenge on anyone that didn't help bring it into existence. This is all symbolism for the Great Awakening. The masses of people becoming aware of those intent on keeping them all asleep. As Q said at times of how an aware populace is the greatest fear for the old system. They are destroyed with a stare, as in they stop existing when they become visible. This doesn't mean people hurt them, only that they become outdated like a view of the world as flat. Obviously the prospect of losing one's place in the world is terrifying for some, and yet they understand morally why they shouldn't fight it. It becomes a complicated quandary on how they should react to it. Do they choose to fight the Great Awakening or help it along? The intriguing thing here is the calm attached to Elon Musk and Grimes. The thing that got them together. And then they had a kid they named after a CIA spy plane. This brings us back to Top Gun 2. Know what else ties into Top Gun? The music video for Eminem is also famous and stars Megan Fox and Dominic Monaghan. Megan was born the same day as Top Gun. And Dominic on a symbol for blackmail in Eagles Hotel, California. The symbols represent the message. Define Fox in terms of the conservative news outlet in 2009 that Obama was at constant war with. You can find proof of this symbolism by lining up past roles. Dominic played a leading role in the Top TV show from 2004. A role where he played a drugged-up desperate to return to fame former rock star. The perfect symbolism for Hotel California. Megan Fox is even more clear. She was famously fired in 2009 from Transformers for talking trash about the director. Reconcile with Obama's feud with Fox News at the same time. Notice how her final Transformers film debuted on June 8, 2009, the same time Umaga had his contract removed. This is relevant because if you've read the intro page you know. Umaga was a symbol of what would happen if the Bush family chose to have Jeb Bush run in 2008. Check the intro post if you haven't read it yet, and the point in this context is the film was used to send messages about Fox News. There was a hope that Fox would promote Obama, but this didn't happen and so Fox was replaced. They don't have the power to outright remove a network, but this is why Fox News was delegitimized, and a stronger push was made to transition people away from network news and onto online, which they had stronger control over. Notice how right after al-Walid was arrested he gave up control of hundreds of millions in Fox News shares. This type of control between many parties is why Fox News seemed almost schizophrenic at times with how it would be anti-Obama with one program and pro-Obama with another. The same was true of their Trump coverage, and we can see the strings using comms. This clarifies that Fox News, despite having this struggle within, managed to resist being fully taken over. This is why certain people like Sean Hannity had a very different reaction to the events of October 28, 2018 than did the rest of mainstream media. The very first Q post on 4chan. Q had their reply to an anon asking why people on Fox looked so ecstatic and the people on the other mainstream media networks looked so distraught. Durham was appointed the same day by Jeff Sessions. This was the escalation in investigation and likely the very thing being reacted to by mainstream media. They understood the metagame of what his appointment meant and the evidence trail he would be picking up as well as the requirement he would have to arrest based on it. The use of 4chan to announce the future arrest was a ticking clock given to panic and force compliance. HRC would have been arrested on the 30th, but as you can see from the update 2 hours later on Q's second post, HRC was detained, which means the ultimatum was successful in getting compliance. I'm getting slightly sidetracked, but it is all very relevant. These types of messages are how comms are used in plain sight without breaking national security protocols. You have these loud mainstream media messages from one side threatening violence and murder and another side threatening arrests. It can be hard to tell who is on which side without high expertise in comms reading. I'm far from that, but I'm getting close to a low fluency. I have yet to decode Transformers, though it's on my to-do list. I noticed the US release of the second film. It was released the same day Tesla received $500 million from the government. Given this is a film series focused on electric cars rather than oil-based, that strikes me as relevant for whatever the overarching message of the thing was. Clearly, they were using it to send messages about Fox News, but that was the utility of a pre-existing message. There is a larger point in creating the film in the first place, and it seems to be tied to Tesla's rise. I notice at the same time Tesla was himself engaged in slander lawsuits, which I find interesting given the other slander comms going on with Megan Fox. I'll decode these films in a future post. Anyway, bringing things back to that Hotel California by the Eagles song, may remind you of the Super Bowl. They were the losing team in the most recent one. I'm not positive yet on the meaning of Eagles in this context, but we've already covered Kansas City Commander-in-Chief symbolism. For them to be the team beaten by the symbol of investigation. Sounds like a comm tied to the investigation and exposure of those blackmail ops. The exposure of which will bring a great awakening. How do they stop the release of info? August 5, 2010, Supreme Court Obama pick Kagan. August 5, 2010, Eminem Love the Way You Lie featuring Rihanna. Courts. What specifically is being kept secret? Toy Story villain is a teddy bear voice acted by a famous fictional male rape victim. The most famous rape of a man ever in a film, and that's just so happened to whom they chose to play the teddy bear. I decode teddy bear comms in a lot of posts, and it's consistent in that symbolism. So that's what they try and stop, and how is the Great Awakening symbolized in comms? That'd be with AI running rampant. Top Gun 2 also involves the inevitable end of pilots due to AI taking over. Remember how Elon Musk and Grimes met via an AI thought experiment? All of these subjects are tied to one another. Top Gun 2 being the biggest film of 2022 was not a fluke, nor was the original the top film of its year. These are both films that represent something going on at the time I intend to deconstruct. It's something that Megan Fox represented too, but what specifically is it? Well, the primary plot of the new film revolves around a man named Bradshaw. So important that despite the countless A-list actors he got second billing to Tom Cruise. Notice the film he did just before Top Gun 2. October 27, 2017. Miles Teller, thank you for your service, plays Bradshaw in breakout role Top Gun 2. October 28, 2017. Q begins posting the first markers of criminal justice leading to the Great Awakening. Not a coincidence. This should help you recognize how big this is, but why Bradshaw? Well, here is Bradshaw at the last Super Bowl. Toasting the guy whose backup QB for the last Super Bowl did the choreography for Top Gun 2. So, what then does Bradshaw symbolize? We have a lot to deconstruct here. I can't just decode Top Gun 2022, I have to begin with the original Top Gun, which might itself require me to decode some calm 20 years before it. The pattern you may have already recognized is the military connection. The thank you for your service, for example, and that's a good clue. Top Gun was built as a promotional piece for the US military by Jerry Bruckheimer. Hollywood attached to the military? I'll return to Bradshaw later as it's key, but first, let's go through the easier pieces. Bruckheimer, CSI. Jerry Bruckheimer also made CSI. In both cases, these are pieces of media meant to give the audience more love for the enforcement agencies of the law. In CSI's case, giving regular citizens the idea that they should never break the law because no matter how smart they think they are, they will leave clues. When you look at it that way, it's actually comical just how blunt it is. Over and over, the first episode hits the viewer with the idea that law enforcement is superhuman. That they will use angles of science you could never counter or prepare for, like insect life cycles on a body. In one part they stop with the promotion to add in a bit of romance, and it's educational to understand the methodology here. In between the propaganda they insert romance. Talking about the criminal investigation in relation to their failed date. Notice the language used. What makes you think Dark Side of the Moon sync to the Wizard of Oz is gonna warm my dang barn? Then she says she wishes to be pinned up against the wall and lay a kiss on her. Then it switches back to the crime scene, and he reflects on her wishes. The point of this show is propaganda, but they need to keep people engaged. What do women most like to see? The answer, according to this metric, is romance. Exactly what she requests, not crime science. So this is just a way to say, hey, in order to maintain an audience we have to have scenes like this. Why Pink Floyd? Well, I think the answer to that is in the symbol for Floyd, tied to criminals and police. If you dig into this, you find that Pretty Boy Floyd's massive press exposure was used to go after criminals. The calm Pink Floyd is likely a symbol of weakening something tough. Incredibly popular. What was Pink Floyd weakening? January 23, 1977, Pink Floyd's famous tour. January 23, 1977. Roots' highest viewed television series of all time. The point might be to create a mindset of racism. Creating a victim complex. This carries through in CSI. That's the thing with racism, if people see it on TV it doesn't matter if it happens to them IRL, the mind makes it real so simply by being exposed to it over and over they are conditioned and subjected to it. The point is it's brainwashing that brews a focus on race. I can understand and even potentially endorse the idea of presenting law enforcement as superhuman, but not this. Is it really that hard to just have different races be friends on TV/movies without the need to constantly highlight the race every 3 seconds? It's maddening to me and I hope it's maddening to others. If we are strictly classifying brainwashing in terms of effects, you would be hard-pressed to find a better bang for your buck than this type of programming to pacify large groups of people. Oh, it creates racial stigma, but what is the end result of that push? More or less actual violence. Consider for a moment the end result of a society being shown Roots. Notice how popular it was. People are conditioned to obsess over the past. Guilt-tripped into obsessing over skin color rather than seeing people as people. It's important to understand that old adage of, we are what we eat, which is to say if someone sees white people constantly doing evil things to black people on TV they become conditioned to think this is reality. A manufactured reality is entirely distinct from the real one. This fake reality is where many on the far ends of both political spectrums live. However, even for people not that far gone, it still is a constant headache to maintain a job and friends while navigating the bylaws of the great social justice machine. I can always tell when Whitey's talking out of his ass, the expertise of the hero criminal detective in CSI we are meant to identify as our friend. This is an aside, but I have to say that learning comms has given me an appreciation for all the irony built into this madness. Those evils of slavery didn't come from the masses of poor that make up the bulk of the world, they came from the most wealthy in the world. It came from people in the highest level of society, the people at the top who still in the present day have servants akin to slaves waiting on them. They gave marching orders to grow these evils through the most prominent media channels for hundreds of years. Who are the ones that get promoted as great people over and over? So much, so they become exceptions to social justice rules. The very same vehicles that created the problem in the first place. It's a remarkable piece of hypocrisy that persists through the ages. The thing creating evil is the only thing immune from its repercussions. This is one of many reasons people need to open their eyes and grow beyond the manufactured reality of celebrity. Okay, let's get back to the point. The point is of course to create the image of law enforcement as superhuman science gods that will catch every criminal. Talking about breaking down chemical compounds for evidence and how anal/vaginal swabs will always give evidence. And then they switch to an anecdote about playing Dreamcast football. Because outside of the brainwashing goals they have to make the show entertaining, and little jokes like that lighten the mood. They tried to appeal to women with the extra romance, and here they appeal to video gamers. And did it work? Top-rated show. This helps us understand that Jerry Bruckheimer working with the military/police for images is something that will get highly pushed to the people. It's much like the recently revealed Call of Duty being tied to the goal of military propaganda. Top-selling game. For it to be tied to military propaganda. Military partnerships behind the scenes are a shortcut to the top of any industry. In Call of Duty's case, notice that there's a whole history of the developers behind it changing. May 17, 2012. Activision EA Seattle lawsuit over execs leaving original Call of Duty creators. May 16, 2012. Pentagon faces new enemy 10,000 honeybees. May 18, 2012. Facebook IPO initial big day amassing $16 billion. May 19, 2012. Mark Zuckerberg marries Priscilla Chan. Symbol of moving away from government ops to private industry. This is something I went over in other posts. Facebook began as LifeLog, and I deconstructed a number of Pixar comms that explained the rationale for the split. Anyway. Top Gun was the biggest film of the year, and the second was the biggest film of that year and of 2022. So in each case, it's something strongly pushed. So what do we see in the present day? Remember my Seattle Kraken decode? December 29, 2018, Tesla China construction authorized. December 29, 2018, giant squid was filmed and photographed alive at the surface. April 30, 2021, Tesla just paid back $614 million in loans Chinese Shanghai Gigafactory. April 30, 2021, Seattle Kraken just paid $650 million expansion fee. It's all coming together. Even though they are doing good, what does this mean about the past? Doesn't it seem contradictory? Sure, right now I've decoded them mostly as flipped, but why the first Top Gun? Why would the CIA do Top Gun 1? Seems uncharacteristically kind of them to prop up Ronald Reagan. The answer requires us to understand not just the symbolism but the historical context. Why would mainstream media suddenly promote the military as heroes in 1986? What specifically happened that year? April 21, 1986. Al Capone's vault, hyped up as holding treasures, turns out to be empty. April 21, 1986. Mikhail Gorbachev announces that the Soviet Union is ready to dissolve the Warsaw Pact with the simultaneous dissolution of NATO. April 26, 1986. Chernobyl amusement park opens, symbol of Chernobyl. April 26, 1986. Chernobyl disaster begins. May 3, 1986. Dollywood amusement park opens. May 4, 1986. Chernobyl contained. May 12, 1986. Top Gun airs. This corrects a long-standing misunderstanding I've had. I've long decoded Chernobyl as the end of certain blackmailing ops by the military, but this gives us the context. The exchange. They gave positive press in exchange for standing down on the blackmailing ops. This doesn't mean Top Gun was what was purchased, but that it was a marker. Comms exist as above so below, which means they represent something else, but the thing they represent they also carry the torch for. This means the story of Top Gun, which has Bradshaw dying, symbolizes Chernobyl going away. Note his death being the critical plot point in the film, but more than that, note what Bradshaw does in the film: he takes pictures of enemy pilots. Symbolism of blackmail by military. His death representing a transition/end to these string-attaching ops. Bradshaw symbol being Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis. As in blackmail. Piano comms equals keyboard as in tech usage. I can clarify a great deal more than this now too. For example, ever hear of Iron Eagle? A film often said to be a rip-off of Top Gun despite coming out several months earlier. Both took inspiration from the same event. Top Gun was created to promote the U.S. Air Force while the Air Force refused to help Iron Eagle. And to make it even more curious, perhaps you remember these Q posts. Notice Q uses Iron Eagle several times in context with films, reader tip. So Q has used this film as a reference alongside Godfather 3, Snow White, Jason Bourne, Alice in Wonderland, and others. You may have also noticed that due to Iron Eagle being taboo and Top Gun being embraced, Iron Eagle was forced to shoot in Israel. This was right after Likud lost the elections. Likud was the pro-Republican faction. Likud lost power in 1984. And then they gained it back after 1986. Exactly when the Top Gun promotion comms were going on, i.e. the agreement to promote the military wasn't just Top Gun but instead giving Israel to Likud. So this film shot in Israel during the opposition party's reign was the reply to Top Gun. Given before it even aired. Top Gun used F-14 Tomcats while Iron Eagle used F-16 Falcons. Notice the scene I highlighted where the main character in Iron Eagle is a teenager and has an entire U.S. military base under surveillance and can procure military supplies anytime he likes. The push from Israel being exposed in secret deals is also likely tied to it. Iran-Contra began due to a newly removed Likud no longer being able to shield the secrets. Reconcile that power with it being shot in Israel and Israel's massive money requests. August 20, 1989, Kansas City Chiefs replace Warpaint mascot with KC Wolf who Red Riding Hood loves. August 20, 1989, Saved by the Bell. August 22, 1989, Seattle Mariners sold to broadcast executives ends up under Nintendo. Surveillance is the key part to focus on here. The origin of Top Gun is said to be a promotional article on the military from 1983. So that already fits the promotion aspect, but there's a lot more here. 1983 is when the video game crash hit, and remember that Atari which died in that was tied to. May 17, 1977, Likud, Netanyahu, wins the first victory over left wing in over 30 years. May 17, 1977, Atari co-founder Bushnell founds Chuck E. Cheese. May 18, 1977, DOE passed Senate 74-10. With that in mind, notice the 1983 article. Notice the Always High Noon title. July 21, 1952, Japanese CIA begins. July 24, 1952, President settles steel strike. July 24, 1952, Gary Cooper High Noon. July 26, 1952, Mickey Mantle hits his first Grand Slam. This was the failed takeover of the steel industry. Reconcile the Japanese CIA with the Nintendo takeover of Atari's markets in 1983. High Noon was a film against government control and blacklisting. Effectively, this is likely a reply, once again. And invoking that symbol with Top Gun Always High Noon was in agreeing to cooperate. To do a Bruckheimer and cooperate rather than fight. Note also above the Mickey Mantle connection with his first Grand Slam. March 3, 1969, Top Gun Navy Weapons School founded Miramar. March 3, 1969, Apollo 9. March 1, 1969, Mickey Mantle retirement announcement. Top Gun itself begins when Mickey Mantle ended. The symbol, therefore, was of what? High Noon is about blacklisting and taking over. Now look at the magazine chosen for Top Gun. Arrest plus Mystery Woman. As in cooperation alleviates the fear of arrest with the government having the data. This is why all the data would get sent overseas to remove fears of a government crackdown. Notice Mickey Mantle's story was always told via a tape measure home run, taping as in recording. I noticed that one of his most famous home runs was the day after the Seattle Dojo began its first post-war tournament. That's something I've decoded as tied to blackmail. Going back to Teddy Roosevelt as historical blackmail, but read my other posts for that. The point is high noon comms with Top Gun equals agreement to end the feud. The primary plot of Top Gun was in the death of Bradshaw, so let's go into the meaning of that one next. Bradshaw RIO. There are comms throughout the film tying Bradshaw into blackmail comms. Taking pictures of enemy combatants unaware as well as several other things I'll be getting into. Despite being dead, he's an even bigger part of the sequel, so the comm is more important than ever to understand. The focus of both films is also on a specific old plane called the F-14. A plane that first flew the same day Elvis made a surprise visit to enlist as a federal agent against drugs. December 21, 1970, Elvis Presley met Nixon to become an agent against drugs. This is the most requested photo of National Archives. December 21, 1970, F-14 Tomcat first flight. It's a symbol of employing celebrity power as government. It's no coincidence this is the most requested photo, as that is a symbol of how celebrities are captured for employment. It's a symbol of being owned by the government. The death of Bradshaw is the key plot point for the comms in both Top Gun films. The death of his RIO radar intercept officer. April 2, 1983, Rio Duran Duran. April 4, 1983, Mario Brothers Arcade. May 1983, Top Gun article which inspires Top Gun. RIO as a symbol for the recorder of blackmail. Mario Brothers being plumbers to clean up the mess, and given Nintendo took over the ops, this fits. Though it's just a hypothesis on that part. As you can see from the Elvis origin for the Tomcat F-14 comms, the language built into these military planes that cost millions is for the data ops. Top Gun 2's story focuses on the trauma Tom Cruise feels due to Bradshaw's death in the original. Now you may remember I began this post talking about the Super Bowl and how it related to Top Gun 2. How they had the Kansas City Chiefs coordinate the football scene. They didn't play football in the original Top Gun, they did however have a famous volleyball scene. Top Gun also released on a very interesting day in football history. May 12, 1986, Top Gun released. May 12, 1986. Trial opens USFL vs NFL. USFL is famously tied to Trump, but I'm not going to get into that angle right now. The main thing is this is a clue on purpose. Once again, this is about getting out of the territory. Just like with Atari and tech and blackmail. I could convey this post much better if I understood this from the start, but as I'm learning, many of these posts suffer from the nature of their creation. I'm learning a lot of this as I go after all. This week may just be the biggest week yet for clarifying the precise structure of the world in history. I can now paint a much clearer picture of all of these films/events. Why Bradshaw? The most famous football quarterback of that time period just so happened to be named Bradshaw. A man from Louisiana who joined the worst NFL team in the league as the first draft pick. His famous story is that initially he was terrible and said he couldn't play the way he had played his entire career. Constantly giving the ball up, worst team remains worst until the greatest play in football history. And then they instantly go from worst team in the NFL to best for several years due to the most famous play in NFL history, the Immaculate Reception. They go from worst team to best. Symbol of getting away with things like blackmail, I suspect. That's what Terry Bradshaw represented. A comm tied to Brady symbolism. Just before his retirement, he got arm surgery under the fake name of Tom Brady. The most winningest quarterback in Super Bowl history, coincidentally, used the same name as the only man ever to live to beat his record. What kind of insanity is that as a coincidence? Also, that name Tom. Bradshaw becomes Tom Brady. Tom Cruise in an F-14 Tomcat in Top Gun. That article looks fake, but you can look this up yourself and find all sorts of official articles discussing it. Many will say, just like I do, how absurd this is as a coincidence. It's comms. Terry Bradshaw has long been used for comms, and his successor for those comms, with several people in between, was Tom Brady. Tom Brady was born the same day of the MK Ultra. The day before Q clearance became a thing for nuclear waste material changes. Let's take a quick detour through Tom Brady. I hope you remember some of my old decodes with him. The South Park episodes, for example, no room to go through them in this post, but they help for comprehension. Tom Brady. Tom Brady symbolism timed to keeping secrets. South Park, for example, portrayed him as a man with a vault full of the greatest feces in the world. Tom Brady got his start by displacing the top-paid quarterback in history. A quarterback that had just been given a record contract to ensure he never moved was suddenly moved due to Tom Brady. Note when. March 8, 2001. Patriots Bledsoe record contract $103 million. March 9, 2001. Celebrity Big Brother. September 11, 2001. September 11 attacks. September 18, 2001. Anthrax attacks. September 23, 2001. Tom Brady replaces Bledsoe for the Patriots. Plus 1 month. October 23, 2001. Patriot Act introduced to investigate 9/11 and anthrax attacks. Symbol of collection of Brady evidence. The replacement of Bledsoe is likely tied to a broken agreement, as I have suspected there were agreements not to be attacked, and what I see in comms, especially when they predate 9/11, represent the countermeasures in place in case they do. This collection of evidence comms is symbolized in Tom Brady's tuck rule, where the ref can decide whether or not someone is moving forward with a pass and flag a foul. It made refs, court, far more powerful and benefited Tom Brady of the Patriots. Know what else happened the day Tom Brady began? September 23, 2001. Tom Brady debut Drew Bledsoe and tuck rule called. September 23, 2001. Or 25, Michael Jordan announced a return to NBA as 23. Tom Brady is the most famous football player. Who is the most famous basketball player? Know what's even stranger than that? September 11, 2001. Michael Jordan returned to basketball. Top story until terrorist attacks causes a delay in announcement. Michael Jordan originally was set to announce his return on September 11. So what does Michael Jordan symbolize? July 25, 1994. Jordan and Israeli end 46-year state of war, Washington, D.C. July 26, 1994. Debut single In My Lifetime Jay-Z. October 26, 1994. Jordan and Israel sign peace accord. November 1, 1994. Chicago Bulls retire Michael Jordan 23. Ties back to Israel and Jordan. Note the data points of famous events and how Michael Jordan begins right as Jordan begins cooperating with Egypt. Jordan has a retirement when Israel and Jordan start getting along. So this collection of evidence comms. When did it end? March 20, 2013. Tuck rule ended. March 20, 2013. Disgaea D2, A Brighter Darkness. March 17, 2013. Shovel Knight Kickstarter announced. I had been trying to decode Shovel Knight and this cleanly does so. Done on the Q day before the end of the rule officially hits. A game about a devil horn digging hero intentionally built as retro as possible. Symbol of digging up the past, and with the tuck rule ending the symbol was tied to things going up for grabs. The Disgaea data point is because I had already connected a prior game to Fukushima comms, so this cleanly fits. Check my Japan post if you want to know more. The role Japan has played in handling the data is a mystery I've been working through for years now. I've made a bit of progress on solving that this week. The answer is tied to rainbows. What is the symbol of a rainbow? I've decoded a few things with rainbow, and they all were tied to data moving, but outside of a vague point of surveillance, I didn't understand why it was tied to rainbows. August 27, 1992. Super Mario Kart with Rainbow Road, No Borders, as final level released. Plus 1 year exactly. August 27, 1993. Rainbow Bridge complete Japan. August 27, 1993. Pokemon developer creates computer-style mouse game, Pikachu. This gives a partial answer as my Pokemon decodes demonstrate how this was intended for the coordination of computer data to monitor threats. Threats include cells with MKOps, and the way Rainbow plays into it is more clear when we look at a few more Rainbow comms. For example, the Rainbow Bridge, the legendary item in Dragon Quest used to cross into main villain's country. I believe the symbol is partially tied to international movement, but it's a bit more dense. December 5, 2011. Marshawn Lynch made spokesman for Skittles. December 5, 2011. Pusuk Japanese oldest dog death. April 21, 1986. Mikhail Gorbachev announces USSR is ready to dissolve the Warsaw Pact. +1. April 22, 1986. Marshawn Lynch born. May 24, 1986. Dragon Quest first released, Rainbow Bridge. Skittles, taste the rainbow, notice how nobody knows who invented them. A symbol of anonymity built in. Nexium, a sex cult that had a daycare where they had a rule that every day a different language would be spoken. The symbol of rainbow, I believe, is in the many different flags of nations. As in a rainbow road is just like in Thor, a method of travel to a distant land, but with a shell as in an alias/secret identity. A bag of Skittles symbolizing a group of people along these lines working towards some goal across long distances but critically staying secret while doing it. That's just a hypothesis, I need to dig deeper to confirm. There are a lot of things I present that have extensive research and high confidence in other things that are just theories. For example, the film Up. I haven't seen the film in a long time, but I think I cracked it this week. Why make a movie about an old man in a flying house? July 13, 2009. Medicare for All push begins. July 15, 2009. Up, trailer, a little boy asks a senior citizen if he can come into his house. As in having Medicare, available for senior citizens. The symbol is striking when you look at that image. A young boy wanting to get inside the house of an old man of Medicare age. Movie made by a man named Dr. May 2009. Obama Global Health Initiative. May 2009. Up. This fits Up being a global adventure and also with the Medicare for All push right afterwards. However, without watching the film, this is just a hypothesis. Even if I'm right, these are of course just the public comms I decode. There's a whole mess of them hiding outside the public channels that coordinate things intended to be a surprise for people who can read these kinds of things. This is why getting data/identifying insurgents is crucial to stopping terrorists. Patriot Team and Patriot Act. Right after Patriot Act surprise, Patriot Team beats St. Louis at the Super Bowl. Speaking of Louis, comms. This brings us back to Terry Bradshaw, as he is famously from Louisiana. In fact, his origin is crucial to all comms sent about him, as his whole shtick was a dumb country boy from Louisiana in Pittsburgh. When I get into Iron Eagle comms, we'll see a lot more of this Louis as a comm, but let's go over Terry Bradshaw next. Terry Bradshaw. Remember the elbow injury that retired Terry Bradshaw? January 7, 1983. Reagan nuclear waste measure. January 9, 1983. Bradshaw injury. Though this isn't when it was reported. That's where it gets even more interesting. It was first reported March 23, 1983, with Bradshaw himself giving a reply in the news the day after. March 23, 1983. Reagan Star Wars introduced. March 23, 1983. Tom Brady arm surgery first reported. Hospital picked the name Tom Brady. Star Wars. Israel was the country that got the most funding from it. Star Wars itself was a comm about data transfer, as I go into in other posts. Star Wars came out the same week as Smokey and the Bandit. Both were the top films of the year and had a clear symbolic relationship. November 3, 1976. Carrie White, White Prom Dress, adaptation, Stephen King's first novel becomes a groundbreaking horror film. May 19, 1977. Carrie, White Wedding Dress, Smokey and the Bandit. May 25, 1977. Carrie, White Space Dress, Star Wars. Both of which involved the secret transport of a Carrie in white away from law enforcement. The symbol being invoked was of Carrie White, Stephen King's first novel. The symbol itself with Carrie being Carrie as in getting the incriminating evidence far away. That's the secret weapon symbol, as that's the precise role MK sleepers play. The laws handling such things changed dramatically that year, as did the landscape of computers, but I'm not going to re-explain every decode. There are 2 points to me bringing this up now, the first of which is the fact that Star Wars being invoked here likely represented an exchange agreement. As in the legislation/funding would go through in exchange for not interfering in getting out of the video game/computer market. At least that's how I read it now. The other point in bringing this up, I bring this up is because Terry Bradshaw has been in a film tied to Smokey and the Bandit. Same star and creator. What's fascinating about this is the film is a movie about jumping a now demolished bridge. July 14, 1978, Terry Bradshaw in Hooper. July 18, 1978, plan begins for Bradshaw famous oil millionaire death on the 23rd. The death of Bradshaw and famously the children being coerced into killing Bradshaw by the mother. MK Combs. 1987. 2 different films about this murder were made. Terry Bradshaw had a famous insult from a Tom about a cat. Can't spell CIA. Other Brady symbolism used in media. Brady Bunch is one I've gone over. The moral exterior, a mask as a symbol. A guide for people involved in that world to look like while keeping actual secrets buried. They do this a few ways, one of which is through sedation, so a child is unaware of being violated. Those calms are often symbolized with teddy symbolism. A sleeping nightgown/child teddy bear. September 17, 2020. Hurricane Teddy peak intensity hitting Nantucket, famous dirty joke. September 17, 2020. Bradshaw Bunch, invoking Brady Bunch. There are a few places that tie into this kind of activity. One of which is mermaid symbolism with legs spread. You know, Starbucks. Starbucks coffee, the person Terry Bradshaw was married to Starbucks until 1983 when his career ended. Same time Japan took over the tech. Remember the Terry Bradshaw as Tom Brady with Tom Cruise in a Tomcat plane? October 5, 1961, Tammy Bradshaw born. October 5, 1961, Breakfast at Tiffany's aired based on a 1958 book. October 28, 1958, New Pope. October 28, 1958, Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman. Tiffany blue is a symbol of private information, notice the cat/diamond and Marilyn Monroe symbol. A new pope being elected the same day is likely timed to the new ops which are historically connected to the church networks. To better understand, let's go into Iron Eagle. Iron Eagle. This is an Israeli film Top Gun the Air Force didn't sanction. The plot of this film begins with the father of the main character being shot down and captured. It then switches to the son working on recording tapes. Now just from this we already have clues on the symbol, but we can take a look at the cast and find a heck of a lot more. I already discussed how the main character, Lewis, ties into Bradshaw, and also into Robert Maxwell with his name as Sinclair, Maxwell Sinclair Computers, but the father who gets captured is even more clear as a symbol. May 7, 1977, Quark Sanitation Space Patrol collects trash. May 25, 1977, Star Wars famous trash scene. April 5, 1978, The Amazing Spider-Man. April 7, 1978, Quark final episode. April 7, 1978, Gutenberg Bible 2 million paid library. The captured father played a split personality man/woman in this show Quark about cleaning up trash. Same symbolism in moving the data in Star Wars I've gone over before. So in this context, it's once again about captured data and freeing it. With the father captured, it leaves his son home alone. Their youngest son says, "Quit bugging me," as he talks about seducing a girl far outside his age range. Film is full of little jokes with awareness of bugging rooms in conjunction with sex and children. It also has a lot of comms about blackmail with kids. Notice the plot with the son thinking back to when his father would sneak him into the plane as he used his tape recorder. This is the most subtle of the jokes, and it's going to get very blunt later. The father is found guilty and sentenced to death. Officially, this is inspired by incidents Reagan had in Libya, a story involving fighter jets and airspace. It had nothing to do with courts, but I'm pretty sure I know why they have this court scene here. In fact, I've probably cracked the whole thing. August 19, 1981, Gulf of Sidra incident, inspired Iron Eagle. August 19, 1981, Pan Am sells profitable intercontinental hotels for $500 million. August 19, 1981, Reagan nominates Sandra Day O'Connor as the first female SC nominee. 99-0 nomination. This explains everything. An agreement to sell the international hotels in exchange for a Supreme Court seat and press support. The incident was nothing more than a show put on for good press. The exchange of hotels across the world was the real prize, and because they were hurting for cash, the exchange was agreed upon. Notice the conflict being territory, as the hotel blackmail game was effectively claimed in this incident. The more modern version, however, was about video games rather than hotels. 1983 was the collapse of Atari and all non-Japanese game hardware, and this is why it's represented in this film. Video games are a big part of the film, and just like the incident with the Gulf, the promotion received for giving them territory. The movie involves kids constantly stealing the classified material of their parents. Sneaking underage kids on the base through a promise of the affection of a girl. The girls steal data from the classified film reels. Reconcile the theft with the hotel exchange. In fact, the video game industry is tied into that as well, because the maintenance of the hardware of pinball/arcade games for a hotel is the perfect cover for bringing in and out electrical equipment for bugging. This understanding unlocks songs like The Who's Pinball Wizard, but let's not get sidetracked. They pretend to attack the base using firecrackers in order to steal a data line into the computers. All the data on troop locations and bathrooms are given to Sinclair. He begins dancing and talking about an operation to take out a pizza as a symbol for a strike on a foreign country. Remember that the whole incident was a play to trade hotels used for blackmail, so all of these little jokes are intended to be winks for those who know. Especially the constant recording of everything. Sinclair gets into the jet with the kid, and behind him as we get lyrics like, "I need you next to me," and the kid starts jerking the control shaft. Close enough to touch lyrics. And it's pretty obscene when you understand the symbolism for some of these films. The kids then scrapbook their time planning and move forward with a rescue operation. Sinclair has a long talk with the kid on a red carpet about how he needs to get to sleep and get in his trailer. To never tell the truth to his mom. When he doesn't do that, Sinclair tells the kid of the consequences that he will be dead. Now you can interpret this as most of the audience would, which is he's telling him the danger of getting shot down in a plane, but if you've been following my decodes, you know how common faking death is. That's the point of this. If someone doesn't go to sleep, i.e. not sedated, or there's some mistake somewhere, in some cases, rather than embarrassing the military with a court case, they will have the family take on a new name and fake their death. I'm not sure how prevalent this is, but there are probably a lot of reasons death faking is a thing, and I doubt embarrassing the military is high up on the list. It's more about safety from what I've seen, but remember, we are viewing a highly biased source that wants to paint a negative light. Anyway, Sinclair demands the kid's recording device, and he uses it to record himself after the kid goes to sleep. This is a good point to decode the director. March 18, 1965. Ipcress file Iron Eagle CIA agent. March 18, 1965. Pillsbury Doughboy introduced Poppin' Fresh. March 18, 1965. Do I Hear a Waltz opens NYC for 220 performances. Notice Iron Eagle director's first work was a famous film in gay communities about homosexual bikers that crossed several lines in Hollywood for indecency. Notice his film Ipcress File was released the same day as the Pillsbury Doughboy was introduced. I've gone over Pillsbury Doughboy before, a symbol of drugging kids for blackmail. The root symbol is giving pills and then poking a naked child. Notice how Pillsbury has a camera. Pillsbury began the same day the Iron Eagle director released a film about CIA agents. There are a lot of films that invoke Pillsbury, the most obvious of which is Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is tied to John Belushi's death, but to understand that we need to understand Belushi comms. Animal House was his most famous work, something pop culture still often references in various ways. Notice the various scenarios. Belushi spying on girls through windows, and up skirts. A 13-year-old girl that a college student gets tricked into sleeping with. A little boy getting knocked out girl after reading Playboy with the intent of taking advantage of her. And most of all, a frat party with a knocked out girl a man has a moral dilemma on whether to sleep with. See any patterns there? Knocked out underage girls being used for sex. That's the symbol of Belushi, and that's the symbol of the monster in Ghostbusters. The reveal of the giant Pillsbury Doughboy. March 5, 1982. John Belushi's sudden and surprising death by overdose. March 5, 1982. Gaylord Perry, master of Vaseline, doctored pitches and evaded capture signs. Seattle Mariners. Ghostbusters was tied to the death of Belushi and represented the disgusting Slimer in his honor. The symbol of connection with Gaylord Perry is how his comms tie into blackmail. Gaylord Perry getting a new job the same day Belushi exited the scene is likely a transfer of ops. Perry is a symbol of international visiting, Commodore Perry symbol, with Gaylord being a symbol of control and when tied to his famous secret, Vaseline balls, as in a sexual lubricant, not to mention that his entire career was tied to authority figures trying to catch him putting Vaseline on his balls. You get the point. Belushi Blues Brothers' symbolism was in keeping things quiet, and whatever method used was changed, with his death being the marker for it. Ghostbusters marked the transition as well. This is more meaningful with the next data point. September 22, 1983. Famous Atari video game burial, the end of Atari. September 23, 1983. Gaylord retirement announced. September 23, 1983. USFL New Jersey Generals sold to Trump $9 million. This gives us the answer on the transfer. Remember that Donald Trump is famous for hotels. The retirement of Gaylord was a transfer of the ops once again, and this time from the NFL to the USFL. Not long-lived, of course, but I think I'm reading this right. Remember the trade of the Intercontinental Hotel chain for $500 million not long before this. August 19, 1981, Gulf of Sidra incident, inspired Iron Eagle. August 19, 1981, Pan Am sells profitable intercontinental hotels for $500 million. The blackmailing ops would transition a few times in a few ways, and since the US government didn't have the Pan Am hotels anymore and yet still had a network of people to blackmail to secure. It looks like Trump ended up pairing with the military as the replacement for the Pan Am ones. I'm a big fan of Trump, but I've not been under any illusion he didn't have some kind of involvement in these kinds of ops. When the USFL ended, these types of ops likely transitioned again, but I'd need to spend time digging into that. The Iron Eagle director clearly was tied to the same comms of blackmail, and so let's get back to that. Some more innuendo. And keep in mind this film was done to smear the Navy with comms, so they would portray them in the worst possible light, so even if this does happen it probably isn't as prevalent or as obscene as a parody would send comms about. Both jokes and smears are always going to be told in an exaggerated manner, so while I do think there is truth to the symbolism, I am pretty sure we are viewing something from a biased perspective. Doesn't make the activities moral, mind you, I just want to keep things in perspective. Sinclair gets shot down and asks the kid to grab the recording tape and listen to it. This works for the story as it's a pep talk through the mission, but of course, it's really a part of the story because the symbolism is of recording. So they make it a constant focus throughout the film. I didn't show several of them, and it's constant. The kid uses the recording, blackmail, to do damage to the foreign country, demanding the Star Wars hostage release or else he takes out their oil refinery. It's worth mentioning that the USSR collapsed for many reasons, but the biggest one cited is oil. So he rescues his father, symbol of 1977 blackmail collection via Star Wars, and then they get ready for music, i.e. narrative and a loop, as in a symbol of government funding project and the money going out from the taxpayer and how it loops back to the people in charge of it. Sinclair turns out to be alive and was picked up by an Egyptian freighter. This may be a reference to Jordan/Egypt partnership I went into before, as it happened around this time. They then get a conditional release that asserts they will be imprisoned if they ever talk about what happened. All to avoid embarrassing the military. So the kid is then given a path to join the military to make sure he stays quiet about it all. They talk about how classified it is, and that's the whole film. So yeah, this means we can go through the other films and find more comms. For example, January 9, 1992, Iron Eagle 3. January 9, 1992, Bush collapses at state dinner with Japanese. This tells me I was probably mistaken in thinking this media circus was foul play in a prior post. It's looking more like optics, but I'd need to decode the film to be sure. I highlighted Terry Bradshaw and Louisiana Com. Those Lewis comms are a lose com, and it's the same symbol here, losing something in the case of the first film, the $500 million paid for the Intercontinental Hotels as well as the tech industry and quite a few other things, I'm sure. Like a game of Monopoly, they were selling assets to stay in the game. Next up, let's go through the main point of this post, the current iteration tied to these Super Bowl comms. Top Gun 2. Film begins exactly as the first one did, except we get a focus on Bradshaw's family after his death, his childhood growing up. A different musical cast as well. Lady Gaga is symbolism for keeping quiet, a gag order, as I've gone over in many posts. Check other posts on the decoding of that, but the name itself is already giving a big hint. Her contribution, Hold My Hand, is not perfectly clear to me, but certainly, right now the ops are very about keeping quiet. I also noticed a few songs not on the soundtrack, Won't Get Fooled Again, which I'll discuss when we get to it. Tom Cruise begins the film with experimental aircraft set to fly at a dangerous Mach 10 to secure military funding. The anti-55 comm I don't get. But given the Lady Gaga comms, it might be about not communicating directly. 5:5 is a comm for clear communication that Q confirmed is used, and this would fit, but there may be a much simpler answer I'm not seeing. Tom Cruise imitates static to keep from being ordered to stand down and bring the plane back. It lends credence to the point of preventing communication. In fact, this fits with the COVID ops, as the whole lockdown point and masking was to keep bad guys from being able to deploy sleepers as easily. In fact, that's part of the late film. They wear their masks to hide from terrorists. I'm jumping to the end, but it makes the point. This film is a promotion for the military as well as representing current ops, means of course the COVID stuff would be in there. So he goes Mach 10 and secures the budget. He is then told that the future is unmanned aircraft, i.e. AI/remote controlled. This is a critical symbol. A symbol of the populace becoming aware of things and thus killing the entire industry of government-funded comms projects. They can only exist, i.e. the work that Tom Cruise coordinates, so long as it remains under the radar. At least in its current form, I'm positive they've thought of ways to continue in some form, but the future is a mystery on a lot of it. Go to YouTube right now, and you can find examples of people discussing their apprehension over AI and what to do when it hits. That's not to say the tech itself isn't part of it. Just like how any product is real and still used as a symbol, it's not just about the messaging, but the messaging is a major part of it. Often the reality is divorced from what we see, and tricks are used to send messaging. This is to say the presentation of AI may be using tricks to make it seem much more advanced than people think. There are a lot of ways to trick people. The panic and fear spreading on YouTube isn't a fear of AI, but of the coming change with mass awareness. Anyway, so Tom Cruise looks at Iceman, his rival from the first film, as he is in charge of the Pacific Fleet. Iceman is symbolic of stored blackmail. Same as fridge comms, which was a prominent symbol in the NFL at the time. Remember Perry as a comm for international trade? Ever hear of the famous 1986 350-pound fridge named Perry that miraculously made a Super Bowl touchdown and forever changed bets? That's why Iceman was a major symbol at the time in 1986. Bradshaw's magic bird to fix his elbow. Imitate noise, like the opening and closing of the refrigerator door. Anyway, so we see that Iceman is in a powerful position, and what do we hear next? Then we are introduced to the primary threat of the film, uranium, blackmail symbolism, plant that needs to be taken out. This is in the context of terrorism, so it's referring to the practice of using blackmail to force people into terrorism. This is different but connected to MK Ops, which rely on long-term conditioning rather than a trap on an otherwise reasonable human being. These operations being taken down is exactly what has been going on for the last few years, as I've long chronicled in these posts, so it's no surprise seeing this symbol. This mission is a suicide run. I can't be sure what they are referencing, but given the COVID landscape and masks and fake deaths, it's probably something akin to why such extraordinary measures were taken before dismantling the terror ops. I'm talking about foreign and domestic IRL. Check my Afghanistan post for an example of foreign, and for local, well, that stuff is kept secret, but it was symbolized in the taking down of killer hornets. On a personal note, I know for a fact MK Ops have been dismantled because I was a victim of them. I met a group of them when they were dismantled, but I can't talk extensively about that yet. So they need Tom Cruise to teach a squad to go on a suicide run, and survive it if possible, but it needs to be done. The prospect of surviving is small, which is why it creates a serious conflict with Tom Cruise, as Bradshaw's son is among those recruited for the suicide mission. As a symbol, Bradshaw, played by Teller, likely represents an exposure of secrets. Remember the comm attached to Miles Teller. Q military symbolism tied to the court cases. Durham has been working ever since the start of Q. Note what Bradshaw has done. May 12, 2022. 0512 John Durham says FBI, intelligence agencies slowly producing classified materials. May 13, 2022. Bradshaw from Top Gun 2 unexpected musical debut when he replaces COVID sick. May 13, 2022. CNN Plus staffers received insulting gift boxes after getting fired. May 13, 2022. Fusion GPS loses its fight over privileged documents. The father, Bradshaw, didn't appear to me to represent exposure but the ops of control. This was made clear by his symbolism tied to taking pictures and singing "Great Balls of Fire" in the film. His death appeared to me to represent a trade of the US military getting out of certain markets cornered by others. Anyway, Q as an op is specifically tied to exposure at the highest level. Shockingly, just like every other op, it too had big pieces of media tied to its promotion. You can see how much money that film lost, as clearly that op was not pushed as a media. The idea of keeping people with secrets alive to tell them would probably be akin to keeping someone like Assange safe. I am probably able to do a lot of what I do probably because people like him stay alive. Don't get me wrong, would do this even if I was the last man standing, but I get the feeling I would see different comms in the world if they went after threats successfully one after another. I like to think part of what I do is a symbol of free discourse being tolerated. There was a time years ago when I did get a threat now and then, but it's been a long time. Either because they didn't work or they are no longer capable of it. Either way, things are looking great for the future. Ski symbolism is in not stopping. Pointed out by a reader, so it's all going according to plan, and the cleanup is surely getting to the final stages when the courts can finish things off. Anyway, Tom Cruise is forced to pay the bar tabs for everyone in the room. This is likely a symbol for the countless cases of bankruptcy we've seen due to coronavirus lockdowns. Not to mention box office bombs we've seen during coronavirus. The people who are cooperating with the military, and part of that cooperation in addition to risk is their financing. The big budget films that cost tons and failed were in some cases likely ops tied to the cleanup. They were probably expected to fail, but the investment still happened as part of the deals. He uses up all his money and then gets thrown overboard. Then the famous, great balls, testes, of fire, symbolism. For regular viewers it's nostalgic, but as a comm it's discussing blackmail ops, in the present context though. Notice the animosity between Bradshaw and Tom Cruise. Keep in mind what Tom Cruise represents as Hollywood and the kinds of thing Q was going for with exposure. This idea of Tom Cruise setting back their career has a different meaning in that context. Notice the song chosen, Won't Get Fooled Again. CSI famously uses The Who for its intro. July 17, 1971, Committee to Form a Libertarian Party. July 17, 1971, The Who, Won't Get Fooled Again. The symbolism of rejecting established parties, specifically the Republicans, by splitting their vote with a new Libertarian Party. The usage of this song may just be a coincidence, but it could represent the constant warfare between sides vying for control of the political landscape. The use of costing, 4 years, might even represent the Biden ops, though if the court cases continue as they have I doubt it'll be the full 4 years. So Tom Cruise helps the children and the tab gets closed. Iceman can't talk due to throat cancer, and this may be more symbolism of the rejection of direct communication for safety. It's a surprisingly good movie as a film. I thought I'd hate it, but even being able to deconstruct it didn't negatively impact it. It's clear a lot of effort went into making it work as a film. The next scene is the most important. Remember how Top Gun tied into the original USFL being removed? May 12, 1986, Top Gun famous volleyball scene. Became a gay icon. May 12, 1986, trial opens USFL vs NFL. With Donald Trump as the owner of one of the teams no less. Well, know what just got revived? The USFL. These kinds of teams are used to coordinate ops, and I'd wager if I ever decoded them I'd find a heck of a lot more going on about those court cases. This is why I need to get more for you up to speed, because I can't decode all of this by myself. Just a matter of time till people catch up with me, smiley face. I keep saying it's not so much masses of evil people in the world, but it is an evil system that is forced onto people. The truth will be like that I think, but we have so much left to see before I can say for sure. Some people have done things that need to be punished, but there are others that need to be celebrated. Many have risked their lives in ops to try and bring in a better age. A time when people can talk freely and not be forever standing on a trap door with deadly spikes. Horrifying practices scattered around the world carried on in secret with a wink and nod, it has to end. To fix things the first thing that has to happen is taking out the ones killing good people, hence the mission. In their final preparation, an emergency happens. They survive, but the very next scene. Iceman is dead, which in conjunction with the last scene is likely a calm for fake deaths. A common practice going on now to protect people with sensitive info. Iceman's symbol is precisely that. Tom Cruise, no longer protected by Iceman, which was the symbol for blackmail, is then grounded. He performs a stunt to show the mission is flyable and then put as team leader. This is a clever scene as symbolism because it's representing the military control of blackmail. I've gone at length on how they were taken partially out of that game, but never fully, and post-Al Wally takedown, and other reasons, they got literally everything as Q said on many occasions. This is why deepfake videos were a long-pushed narrative. Getting people prepared for fake videos when things went public. The counter to that is naturally disclosure, as an awareness of the comms system diffuses any possible counter as everything becomes visible. The film has this as a plot point. The general has the evidence necessary to destroy Tom Cruise but chooses not to. The power over these individuals has been used to employ their fame rather than rack them over the coals as they could. I am extremely optimistic about people, perhaps foolishly so on occasion, but I admire a story of redemption, and so even though some may be acting morally so as to avoid the consequences, that doesn't mean it's the only or even primary motive. These people, from everything I can see, are not given a choice either way for much of their lives. I can't fault people held hostage for acting at the behest of people who could destroy them. It's the horror of living life on a string, but I digress. This is a more complicated topic, and we don't have all the facts. I just didn't want to suggest the control of blackmail is the reason for good deeds in many cases. Though I'm sure in some cases it is. The uranium strike begins, and Tom Cruise sacrifices himself to save Bradshaw. Then Bradshaw returns after the strike and saves his life in return. This movie does a great job of working on multiple levels. I watch a lot of films with comms in them, and I've never seen them work so perfectly on both levels. Though part of that is just I know the history of these ops far better than most of the films I see. I suspect the more history I'll learn, the better those films will get. This is where they hide pretending to be the enemy with masks on. Consider the game Among Us as a symbol, as that's the basic point of hiding in plain sight. The symbol of cooperating with good guys while being aware that there are evil people among us, and if they identify that cooperation, it puts people in danger. Note Hangman is the one to save them. Notice his helmet being someone where the name is filled in, and they die. Symbol of getting the names of criminals and bringing them to court. That's the point of the ops. You might think it would be simple to stop practices after identifying them, but the evidence is required for arrests. Extra steps are required to get close to them and surveil them and then find what is necessary to destroy them. So being saved by Bradshaw after helping rescue him. The symbol of post-cooperation and a happily ever after. My goal is to help a peaceful great awakening in as quick as time possible. There are ways I could present information that would make people angry, and it might lead to more views, but the idea of stewing over the past doesn't appeal to me. I want to grow in the right way, and that's what I try and teach. This philosophy of mine puts me in the symbolism camp of OpenAI, I think, which is the competitor to DeepMind. OpenAI versus DeepMind. So all of this is leading to AI battle with the prospects of the Great Awakening and the long history of keeping people asleep. Unlocks the meaning of Bruno Mars. Comms of making people lazy. Monkey symbolism for imitation. DeepMind connection in the point of it. Wanting to keep people from getting smarter, both involve a lack of growth. The Lazy song explicitly has someone wishing he could get smarter and make their parents proud, but then deciding to do nothing. This is reinforced when I looked at the release for that song. February 15, 2011. Lazy song. February 16, 2011. Dead Island reveal trailer. The most famous game trailer by some accounts. Zombies symbol in many cases for masses of idiots. The trailer was far more popular than the game ever became. December 11, 2009. Bruno Mars writes Spin Me Round Flow Ride a Right Round, feat Kesha. December 11, 2009. Angry Birds Worldwide throwing birds to attack pigs, ham radio comms. Spin me right round like a record, just like retweets. Or the blue angry bird which splits into several birds. Shepherding the masses towards social media and engaging in hostility online. This opens up a curious question too. What then is Microsoft doing? There are a lot of these on Musk's feed, highlighting Bing AI and how it's threatening to expose the secrets of prominent people and smearing people. If this is comms, might they have some test going on right now with exposure? It'd probably be tough to find, but they might be testing how people who aren't quite as optimistic as me would handle hearing about the horrors of the world. Though I'm probably just seeing what I want to see here. Even so, I would like to talk to people who get off on that horrible wavelength. You know, the ones, fermented by bots into wanting nooses and pitchforks. I'm the anti of that, but I feel an obligation to help correct that kind of thinking. It's not healthy for anyone. Yes, there have been great crimes committed against us. Yes, I feel a sense of rage and despair at some things, and I feel we need certain crimes punished, but we aren't going to become a mob. We aren't going to lose our humanity to this. We are going to learn what happened calmly and figure out how to fix things. That's how we move forward. Things are going well, as you can see by this post. There are so many things going on it's hard to keep track of it all. For example, February 3, 2023, massive, 50-car train derailment, toxic fire begins burning Palestine, Ohio evacuation. February 4, 2023, Chinese surveillance balloon shot down by U.S. fighter jets off the U.S. eastern seaboard. February 14, 2023, 2 more trains, hazardous materials, derail 2 weeks after Ohio chemical spill. February 12, 2023, we basically nuked a town, 3 more chemicals discovered in Ohio train derailment. February 12, 2023, new Israeli regime moves toward cleansing all Palestinians from Palestine. Palestine, Ohio train wreck in relation to events in Palestine and Israel. This local event of derailment Ohio-Palestine may actually be about what's going on in Palestine-Israel. They say they nuked a city and are cleaning out Palestine, which has long been full of terrorists. They create this op around Ohio-Palestine so as to relay messaging about the things they can't say about the real situation overseas. Okay, time to end this post. Even after condensing dozens of images, I ended up with about half a post extra worth of decoding I couldn't fit about the Super Bowl and a dozen other subjects, so you'll probably get more of that next time. I may just spend several weeks on Super Bowl comms as it's become clear just how crucial they are to everything going on in the world. Not sure if that's a good or bad thing, but if you want to give leads on Telegram, I'll consider any decoding direction requested. Telegram chat. Join our Telegram group. Send leads, begin decoding. This has been Trust Kansas at the 2023 Super Bowl, the Commander-in-Chiefs.